For those of you who don't know, the kind of normie version of the appeasement story is that Neville Chamberlain, who was the head of England, just to be quick, the PM, uh, he signed the Munich Agreement, which did a bunch of things, but most importantly, it gave part of Czechoslovakia over to Germany. And when they accepted this settlement, Hitler was thought, oh, these guys are pussies. I can take whatever the fuck I want. And yeah, and so as quoted by the New York Times, a prime mover of normie sentiment, Munich represented a bloodless victory for Hitler and a moral defeat for the West. And so that became like this ultimate symbol of why diplomacy is bad, why diplomacy is just eh. And some people have like a pathological attachment to this view of the history. So they said, oh, in 1991, just like in 1938, America stood on the sidelines, unwilling to be dragged into another war. But then they were eventually forced to abandon it and act decisively, which makes our dicks rock hard. Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but here's the problem. The problem is, first of all, that policy that they criticized so much had very high public approval. It was like only a few points short. No, it was way more popular than the decision to start the Iraq War. So they go, oh, these statistics are relevant, but these statistics back then, well, we should just ignore them. Who cares what the fucking plebes say, right? And then secondly, a lot of these Eastern European countries also benefited from kind of chopping up Czechoslovakia, including Poland. And, so it was like kind of assuming that everyone was on the same side, and that was a total crock of shit. But then you get this ghoul, Albright, right, who's trained by Brzezinski, and, she's like an old fucking babushka, so she's not someone who's had tons of military experience, but she meets with Colin Powell, and he has this doctrine. Despite all his flaws, he has this doctrine that military should only be used after there is a clear political goal, and then only just decisive force. And then Albright goes, what's the point of having this great military if we can't use it? Which whew. Anyway, a lot of these neolibs considered this Albright's finest moment, and she was tough on Haiti and meeting in the White House Situation Room, and she forced a decision about what to do on the invasion, and she said, "Just give me a mandate, and I'll go get it done." And like, okay, that's a total overstatement. But Powell, he's looking back and he goes, "I thought I'd have a fucking aneurysm," which is, yeah, no, you and me both, buddy. So, and the other thing is, Powell was a literal Shabbos goy. Even he's saying this is a bit much. A literal Shabbos goy. That means he like did things for Orthodox Jews that they couldn't do for themselves. He was like a little helper. But you get this, and you get people like Albright who just develop this aggressive moralism with all this baggage, and they pledge never again to let a world turn the blind eye to these atrocities. Unless you're the one causing them. Like when her sanctions killed about 5 million Iraqi children, and she goes, "Oh, it was worth it." But I'm getting ahead of myself. I think the issue with this view is that it leads every side to make a into a situation where there not only is there ethnic conflict, but an ethnic conflict nobody can compromise on. Like even Elie Wiesel, who was this Nobel laureate, Holocaust survivor, debatably, who basically promotes every war, by looking sad, and he and a bunch of other these famous American Jews did like basically a tour of Yugoslavia, and they just pushed for this war, right? And he goes and he talks to it's big, I'm not gonna fucking pronounce that, but he said, like, this isn't just war, this is genocide. You can't meet a murder of people. Our people simply see not simple enemies, they're murderers. And so they're just gonna keep fighting and fighting and fighting. So, the reason this World War II stuff keeps getting dragged back into it is because, well, I guess apparently it's useful. You know, Eli Wiesel, he apparently pulled the Clintons aside, and he's like, "Oh, we got to do something. We got to do something, or whatever." And this apparently is like one of the things that influences the kind of humanitarian interventionist impulse of Hillary Clinton. You know, and then Bill, he gets up and he goes, "We learn again and again that the world has to run its course of animosity and violence. Ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia is most present manifestation of what we also see with the Kurds in Iraq and the Baha'i in Iran and the race-based violence in South Africa." So he uses like 4 of those 5 to like push for wars that the U.S. / Israel relationship people want, right? And they take this model of this kind of hand wringing and this moralism, and they apply it to the situation in Yugoslavia, and then they take that and they also apply it to Iraq. But they escalate it at very specific points, and I'll see what I mean in a bit. But first of all, the Hitler metaphors don't stop with Bosnia. No, they just keep going and going and going and going. And when you get these Holocaust people and Israeli people and all the Jewish organizations, that gives it a lot of credibility. And right now, yeah, you can kind of scoff at it, but apparently, at least it gives the liberal journalists, at best, it gives them justification, I guess. But if you're like really cynical, it also gives them cover. So I can't tell. I'm not a mind reader. I think the truth is somewhere in between. You get this idea of Saddam as Hitler, and it's it had a profound effect on some. One guy, he said, "Oh, I'm not an instinctive supporter of the use of force," and I support Jewish Muslim dialogue. He's Jewish, by the way. And he goes, "Oh, I listened to Helen Bamber of the Committee of Care of Children of Concentration Camps and the Care of Victims and Torturers," and they told him, "Oh, you must never ever be a bystander." I don't know what this person has that they think they can use this rhetoric, because I just looked her up. She's basically never fucking left London. And then after she did her activities, like War in the World just exploded, It's like this explosion coming from this point in the 90s. And then what we get here again, oh, hey, look, it's Eli Wiesel, and he's promoting this war too. Surprise, surprise. And he goes, "I swore I never would be silent whenever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor." Uh, okay, that obviously doesn't apply to certain countries, but I honestly don't think anyone cares about Eli Wiesel anymore, especially since he died and it came out that he was like a fucking rapist. But uh, he gets this sentimentalism. These libs love that shit. So they go like, "Oh, where do we go wrong over Iraq? What should we be doing about the Iranians and the Zimbabweans and the Chechens and the Tibetans?" And this guy, he's just whipped into a frenzy about all these fucking countries he doesn't know nothing about. He doesn't know anything about. And they go even further. They go a step further. This guy, he says, "The truth about Israel and the Holocaust is quite different. They the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem rejoiced in the Holocaust and wanted even more. And then Yasser Arafat, he shakes the hand of Saddam Hussein, who wants missile attacks against the Israelis. These are the people who supposedly want peace. All right. He goes on to say that they want peace in the next fucking paragraph. Yeah, okay, whatever. But Bill Clinton, he starts off with just plain sanctions, right? He goes like, we impose conditions to ensure Iraq would never threaten the region or the world. He honestly only fucking he honestly is only talking about Israel because Saudis. I doubt they would have gone to war with Iraq. And Iran, well, they never gave a fuck about what Iraq did to Iran. But, some people, this is still pre-Trump, pre 9/11, so people, they still haven't developed that good, cynical callous. And they were all, you know, even dumber than they are today. That's my only interpretation. And a lot of that obviously has to do with the centralization of the media, which is driving a lot of this. And Clinton goes, here's something I also find ironic, which is that the blame is always on, the enemy of the U.S., like no matter what they do. So, he goes, Iraq has no one to blame but Saddam Hussein for the position Iraq finds itself in today. Iraq could have ended its isolation long ago, but like, he he goes, oh, complying with the will of the world. And it's like, it's two countries. But, this is the 90s, so they got a very, very tame Russian regime, right? So, Russia has bent the knee for a good bit. But when that stops, oh, well, I guess we get what we have today. So around this time, in the 90s, around 97, 98, some UN people are arrested, and this starts this big campaign against the Taliban, especially with their policy on women. Who Clinton gives her freaking credibility to. They joined this big celebrity gala on this stuff, but it's also kind of funny because when they're trying to promote this sort of Afghan war and oh those poor Taliban women, you get Hillary Clinton talking about oh the women, but this is when the Monica Lewinsky scandal is in full force. And then I looked into it a bit, and yeah, okay, so basically a lot of these big feminist organizations, they're closely tied to the Democratic Party, founded by rich Jewish women who have a stake in the ability of the Afghanistan war to keep pressure on Iran and on the pipeline politics of the whole thing, and have the drug trade and all this awful ghoulish bullshit. But Clinton is like strongly supporting the war because of Mo women, and and then another one of her kind of court feminist compadres was like super hawkish. Zontag, Susan Zontag is like saying like America was given a dose of reality on 9/11, and she's saying the country shouldn't see like the attack on as an attack on civilization, but you know um it was she wanted to she said that like she's kind of whipping some of the stuff into a frenzy, and she is connected to some of these rich Israeli affinity people. Now